I just finished the second volume of Stranger Things, and I just want to say, wow. I was amazed and very proud of myself for getting so many things right, especially the wormhole theory. Thank you so much for all of your encouraging messages, and I will be making more videos about the ending episode because I think I also figured that out. If you haven't read the book, then I suggest watching the movie A Wrinkle in Time, because the ending is tied to the book. In today's video, I'm going to share my opinion about this volume, and if I'm being honest, I have some mixed feelings about it. As Eddie said, bad news first, always. I believe the main problem with this volume was the pacing and the dialogue. It felt like I was watching 3 hours of the series, but it was only about 30 minutes worth of actual content. After researching this subject more, I found out some terrible news. Apparently, Netflix told the directors to dumb down the shows because users are often scrolling on their phones while watching. This is why the directors included all those pointless dialogues, so that people scrolling TikTok could still understand what's happening in the show. That's why so much of the dialogue sounded like the characters were just explaining their current situation. Maybe this is also why we saw some very bad acting, and why things didn't feel as natural as they did in previous seasons. For example, I didn't like Winona Ryder's character this season at all. It was the biggest letdown of the entire crew. The same could be said about Finn. I don't know if it was the writing or if he really struggles to act emotionally. In the hospital scene, when he saw his mother doing better, he had more chemistry with Max than with his own mother. He wasn't concerned about her. He didn't ask her anything. There was no sign of relief on his face. No tears, no emotions, just nothing. It felt like Mike randomly ran into her at Starcourt Mall and was too embarrassed to properly hug or worry about his mom. That scene was very awkward for me, especially considering how Karen saved the day there. I swear, Season 5. Karen is so badass, and every time she appears on screen, something epic happens. On the other hand, I really like the acting from some of the other characters. For example, Sadie and Caleb were phenomenal this season. Lumax is my favorite couple, and you could clearly see the chemistry between the two actors. Seeing Caleb act when Max woke up truly made me sad that Lucas was sidelined like that. My boy can really act, and yet the Duffer brothers continuously set him aside. It feels like such a waste of his talent. Another brilliant performance was delivered by Gaten in the scene where Dustin finally opened his heart to Steve. It was awesome seeing my favorite duo back together. Gaten's shift from being an insufferable, arrogant prick to a vulnerable teenager without a father figure was extraordinary. And you could feel the emotions through the screen. Also, Dustin stopping Steve saved his life. I don't usually have a problem with plot armor, and I definitely don't have a problem with the fact that none of the characters died. For me, Stranger Things was always that kind of show, where everyone would live happily in the end. But even if I don't have a problem with it, I still expect a little decency and continuity. For example, that same hospital scene was ridiculous. The Demodogs ignored everyone while chasing Max through the whole hospital, but when they finally cornered them, they suddenly stopped and moved cautiously. Not only that, but Kate Bush was playing on the radio and they didn't hear it or follow the sound, yet they heard the tube inside the washing machine and decided to check that out. I know the show is science fiction, but we're talking about the same Demodogs who heard a broom falling inside the lab in Season 2, which resulted in Bob's death. This plot armor was a little too much, even by Stranger Things standards. The same could be said about Nancy versus the entire military base. Lieutenant Akers' squad was supposed to be one of the best units in the US military. And yet they couldn't shoot one person who only learned how to use a gun like 2 years ago? It also felt like, in this volume, no one was really in danger. The closest to dying were Jonathan and Nancy, and yet the liquid stopped exactly when it reached them. It didn't even touch them. At the very least, they could have made the liquid not solidify immediately, covering them up to their necks before stopping. That would have been far more dramatic. I also have mixed feelings about that scene, because it seemed like the two of them got back together, but in reality, it was a breakup. That's what the ring falling down represented. They realized they aren't really a good match for each other, and the only thing keeping them together was the shared trauma they suffered. If Nancy wanted to get back together, she would have put the ring on her finger. Instead, it seemed like she chose herself in the end. No Jonathan, no Steve. I think that's for the best, because it would have really sucked if Nancy broke up with Jonathan just to get back with Steve. Another problem I had with this volume was the focus on minor characters like Holly. While I understand she's an important part of the plot, it doesn't feel right that she got so much screen time. even more than 11 and Mike. Season 4 introduced the conflict between 11 and Henry, and showed us how everything really started. Season 4 and Volume 1 of Season 5 built up the rematch between 11 and Vecna, yet Volume 2 completely dismantled that buildup, and instead introduced another contender, Will. It felt like 11's character was misplaced in this volume. She was always the heroine, and now she's torn apart, even to the detriment of Kaylee. I don't know about you, but for me, this didn't feel like Stranger Things. I might get some hate for this. I also didn't like how they handled Will's confession. The timing was extraordinarily bad. They were preparing for their biggest operation ever, and they just put everything on hold and gathered everyone around for this confession. The reason why Volume 1 was so brilliant is because it ended on a high note, but Volume 2 completely missed that. For example, the moment Will confessed and Dustin and Lucas said that Will would never lose them, and the camera shifted to Mike, I was like, oh my god, what if Mike stays silent? And then the episode just ends. I swear that would have torn everyone apart and made the fandom explode. Yet they continued with something that was way too insignificant to count as a volume ending, even if the final episode was coming out in 5 days. We all knew they would successfully infiltrate the Upside Down, and that Vecna would put his plan into action. Ending Volume 2 like this completely stole the emotional impact that Volume 1 had. Compare that ending to the one where we saw Will's powers activate, and you can clearly see the drastic decline. Those are my main complaints about Volume 2, and whether these issues are major or not, I'll let you decide in the comments. Now let's talk about the good parts of the show. Overall, I like this volume as well. Yes, it was weaker than Volume 1, but we still got a lot of answers. We finally got answers to two of the biggest questions in the show: what the Upside Down is and what Vecna's real plan is. Volume 2 also confirmed that the Mind Flayer is the ultimate villain of the show. When Vecna captured Will and said to him, "I am the one who invited you in, I am the one who gave you powers," and the camera shifted to the time when the Mind Flayer possessed Will, the one who said that line to Will was not Vecna. It was the Mind Flayer controlling Vecna. And in the same way the Mind Flayer controlled Vecna here, it has been controlling all of Henry's actions so far, with the ultimate goal of merging the two dimensions. Max finally woke up. I really liked that they made her weak and that she needed to stay in a wheelchair. Being able to go full battle mode after being in a coma for such a long time would have felt off, and it would have triggered a lot of people. I'm curious to see if she'll play a bigger role in the last episode because, as things stand, it seems like her character arc is finished. She escaped from Henry, shared everything about Vecna's plan with the group, and she's no longer in a position to fight. We now have the full gang together with some extra additions: Karen, Vicky, and Professor Clark. I just know Clark is living his dream right now, learning about other dimensions and about 11's powers. Even though I've said this before, what I liked the most was that Dustin and Steve finally reconciled. Nancy and Jonathan also talked things through. Even if the outcome wasn't what we expected, it felt like another conflict was resolved. The only character I have mixed feelings about is Kaylee. First of all, I don't understand where all the hate for this character is coming from. I believe the parallels between her and 11 are beautifully crafted, and Kaylee represents what 11 would have become if she hadn't had the support system she did. 11 had Hopper, who looked after her like his own daughter. She had Mike, who loved her for who she was. She had good friends who were always there for her. Even if you don't agree with Hopper's parenting methods, you can't deny that he instilled 11 with a strong moral code. Kali lacked those things. She didn't have someone to look after her or to teach her things like love and acceptance. After she left the lab, Kali lived among homeless people and possibly criminals. If you grow up in that environment, it's clear what kind of path you might take in life. Yet Kali chose to use her powers to hunt down the people involved in the project. She didn't use her powers to get rich. She used them for revenge. That was always her goal. And now that she knows what Dr. K is planning and the real reason he needed 11, it makes sense that she wanted 11 to remain trapped in the Upside Down. Still, I have my doubts about her. I don't know why, but something feels off. Maybe it's the way she always refers to Henry as brother, but something is definitely not right with her. Maybe she still holds a grudge against 11 because she got caught and experimented on because of her. Kaylee knew her blood didn't work, so if she escaped, the military would eventually leave her alone. So maybe she's planning to betray 11 and trap her in the Upside Down. Maybe she's the traitor everyone's been talking about. I still think that in the end, she'll help them fight Vecna, and that her role in the story will be to create an illusion of the cave while they're facing him. One last thing I want to address is the scene where Kaylee saw the pregnant women being infused with her blood. You really need to watch my video called The Dark Truth Behind Eleven's Powers, Project MKUltra Explained, for a better understanding. After seeing that scene, I am even more inclined to believe that Dr. K is the K from MKUltra. As I said in my previous video, MK is an abbreviation for Martin and K. Project MKUltra was the project in which Terry Ives, Eleven's mother, participated when she was pregnant with Eleven. During that project, she, along with other women, was injected with Henry's blood, which is the reason why Eleven and the others were born with telekinetic powers. That scene clearly resembled Project MKUltra, pregnant women being infused with blood containing superpowers in order to create an army of monsters to attack the Russians. Seeing two instances of this project makes it even more plausible that Dr. K was also in charge of Project MKUltra alongside Martin. Maybe they will find a mention of this in Brenner's journal, but I doubt they'll have the time. With only one episode left, I fear that we won't get proper answers to all of our questions. For example, was Will being used to construct the tunnels the only reason he was kidnapped? Or is that brief memory of Henry the only explanation we're going to get about his backstory? Because for me, that feels a little too shallow. The final episode will be 2 hours long, but there's a lot that needs to happen. We need the big final fight and the epilogue, and those two things alone should take up at least an hour. I really hope they don't rush the ending, and that we get proper answers to the main questions that are still left. Overall, I enjoyed Volume 2 as well. It's true that it was weaker in terms of impact compared to Volume 1, but we still got a ton of answers and many conflicts were resolved. The stage is set for the final battle to take place. The pacing was a little off, and they could have deleted some scenes with Holly to focus more on the original cast, but I trust that the Duffer Brothers will deliver in the end.